But we find that the Father of all mankind has a body, soul, and spirit, only he doesn't wear out or get sick like we do in our temporal state. He has a body that is real, just as his space station, his home, his house, and his extraterrestrial ships is real and can be touched. There's nothing wrong with the physical. Yes, we have an eternal spirit, that life spark that science has yet and probably never will understand. But let us examine a few bits of science, starting in Psalms 99 in the James Moffat translation of the Bible. Verse 9 starts out thus, quote, "Exalt the Eternal One, our God, and worship at his sacred hill, for the Eternal is a mighty majesty." We find that some translations, they say mountain, which is a mistranslation of the Hebrew. The word that they translated as mountain is describing this thing that is called a mount sometimes, that is high up. It's in outer space. So, another point we might think about, and worship at. Where's at? I was always told by my teachers, when you say where's it at, it's behind the at. But where is this sacred hill or mountain, depending on your translation? We know that it's definitely not over in Sinai desert and it's some mountain over there. We go lay prostrate at the foot of it, hoping that the Almighty will appear on the top of it. But some say mountains, which is a mistranslation of the Hebrew word mount, something that is high up in outer space. We find verse 2 of Psalms 99 tells us that Zion, S-I-O-N, or Z-I-O-N, which becomes very confusing as it's spelled both ways. It means the government which is administrated from the mount. Goes on to say, great is the Eternal within Zion, high over the nations. So there it gives us a clue. It's talking about the Eternal, the ever-living, the Almighty, the Ancient of Days, the Alpha, the Omega, all of the different connotations that mankind has placed upon this one that is called eternal. But remember, it says he's within Zion, and he's high up over all the nations. Now, that gives us a clue, up very high. Excuse me, verse 5 tells us that we're on the footstool, which is earth, and we're to worship him, obey him, listen to his laws and precepts and statutes and judgments. We wonder why we're in such a moral decay, and we would remind you once again that Christ, he called the earth his footstool. Continuing with verse 5, it says, exalt the Eternal One, our God, and worship at his footstool, a mighty majesty is he. Now the earth is called, even in the New Testament, it's called the footstool of the Almighty, representing the ancient idiom that he steps down or lands here occasionally. And we know that in the New Testament, this Christ, he prophesied of his imminent return one day, and the men of Galilee were told, as you shall see him go, so shall you see him come. That was promised to those men standing there in that generation, which he literally did, as in another translation, or another manuscript and a tape that we cover talking about the resurrection. He came back, and we proved that there was a great exodus from this planet by extraterrestrial ships that had come back. They had resurrected those from the righteous Abel to Zechariah, and they were taken off. Why else would it say when Christ returns, he will come with 10,000 times 10,000 of his saints that he shall bring back? You can't bring them back unless it's somebody that was here before. Now verse 7 tells of him and his messengers that are ascending in a cloudy pillar, a ship from the great mount. Now see, there's a great deal of confusion here. Let me remind you once again, in case you're one of those folks that just kind of tuned in on the middle of all of this, that sound so far out and so far-fetched, because we don't go with the theory that we're all going to be eternal spooks and the Almighty is a spook, because people have misunderstood and mistranslated the Scripture that where it says that those who worship him must worship him in spirit. But that is another subject that we won't get off on, but let me remind you once again that, as in other chapters, we take you off and we tell you about this ancient king called Gilgamesh, one of the most ancient writers in the world. It's one of the oldest recorded writings, and it's led to terrible confusion to a lot of people, and they're not exactly sure who this Gilgamesh was, but it told about that he ascended in a great eagle, as we've proved in our chapters, eagle ships, that he was transported in a shuttle ship or a craft of some type, and he was going to the pillar of the Most High so that he might pay a visit with him and see if he could not return to that world, or I maintain it is a space station beyond the imagination of the mortal man at this present time. Allegorically, it would be like we're in a stone age. But we find Gilgamesh using the word pillar. And we find in the Egyptians they spoke of pillars, and the Babylonians spoke of pillars, and it is even carried over into our Bible and the Old Testament and so forth. Now here's an interesting thing, and it goes on, and continuing with verse 5 here, it quotes, "And still through a cloudy pillar speak to them." Now this cloudy pillar, again the word pillar, it should be Venus, Luz, Bethel, meaning house of God, house of light. Luz means light or planet of light. And we have told in other talks, we have proved that this Mount of Olives, that it actually, if you look it up in the original Hebrew word, it blew the translator's mind. They were not consistent. They were not able to follow the thought there, and so they put in Mount of Olives. And we know that olives is just like the good figs and the bad figs, where it's speaking of the children of God, and it is speaking of fruit, the fruit of somebody's loins. It is talking about a household, a family tree of people. And so we would remind you once again that this cloudy pillar is referring to this mysterious Venus, the bright and morning star, which they refer to Christ in songs and psalms. They call him the bright and morning star. And as we quoted over and over again, that Revelations 22:16, I believe it is, they say that he is the morning star. Now, the scientists are aware of today, and they've spent a great deal of time, they're setting up all sorts of sophisticated camera equipment, trying to use infrared radio waves, and they're trying to break through the clouds, the many cloud layers that covers Venus. And we cover in other chapters in the apocryphal writings how this is also, the planet is disguised, and even your King James breaks it down, as we tell in others, that it is covered with an overcoat of clay or space derbish and dirt that has been picked up through the endless centuries, that it has been there. Now, to prove it's a mount, or like a space station, Isaiah 27:13, Isaiah calls it a mount. He also tells of those who worship in it. The religious world has never understood that this place is the very same heavenly Jerusalem as John and Paul and many others of the New Testament speak of it, and it's not here on earth, because if it was speaking of an earthly Jerusalem, why would they put heavenly, which is the old connotation of the men of old, where they would speak of outer space or the sky or regions beyond our earth. They would call it the heavenly. Well, even today we still say, look towards the heavens and see the stars and the planets and the suns and etc. Now let us quote you this verse 13 of Isaiah 27. "And it shall come to pass in that day," it's talking about a day that I believe is referring to our day of science and space travel. We're going to see these things come to pass. "That the great trumpet shall be blown, and they shall come, which were ready to perish in the land of Assyria, and the outcasts in the land of Egypt, and shall worship the Lord," get this, "in the holy mount at Jerusalem." Now, as we have pointed out in some other chapters, in case you're one of those that have not got a hold of them, and other tapes, We have shown that where many times when they spoke of Job, they mistranslated the word Jashub-Halem. As we have explained before, it was talking about the people, the children like Elohim, who came in the Shub ships, who belonged to Yah.